Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. And thank you so much for joining us again for another awesome episode. And just before we get into the episode, I wanted to mention that I have been on a number of interviews this last little while myself, talking about my newest book, Nature Care Solutions Reclaim Your Power to Heal, as well as some upcoming courses that we are going to have launching pretty soon. And one's going to be on what's called a 30-day metaphysics detox. And the other one is I am taking my course, Nature Care Solutions. We're going to turn that into an 8-week online course live with me as we go through all sorts of different information. I want to teach you guys how to actually make some of your own remedies for cents on the dollar that you can do on your own. Some really important, powerful ones that we use for our family, and just really break down how you can heal from a host of different things naturally. So I'm excited to get that together, and I've been talking to lots of different people about it. So I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some of the shows that I've been on over the last while, but we've been on the Loretta Brown show and the Miracle of Healing radio show. I was also recently on the Guy Lawrence podcast. That was a really awesome interview. Guy and I talked about, gosh, everything around healing, spirituality, metaphysics, and all of the interplay between all of these things. Guy will actually be a guest on our show in this series too, talking about near-death experience. So we had a really awesome collaboration, a really wonderful talk. So I'm going to put some of those links down there. And if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, go and check it out. I think they're packed with tons of useful information and just really important stuff to talk about and to learn about right at this time. So I'll put those links and you can go and check that stuff all out. In this episode here with Jami Sieber and Kim Rosen, one of the awesome things that they have allowed us to do is we've taken a specific clip. Now, they do a lot of music and poetry, and they mingle these things together to really help people move through the feelings that can come up around loss, around death, around significant changes in our lives, and really, really beautiful. And so we've actually got a really beautiful clip that's about 6 minutes long that we play a little bit later on in the show. So it's somewhere around 50 minutes into the show or somewhere like that, just before we finish up with our closing remarks and how you can get all of the contact information for Jami and Kim. So make sure that you guys go there and listen to that piece. It's really quite beautiful. And this is really the type of work that they do and that they create to assist people in moving through these transitional feelings. So what I recommend is, sit back and just really let the music and the spoken word sort of hit you and be really present with whatever sensations come up. So try and find some space to be able to actually take in everything that that music and spoken word offers. Now, something else that we have been talking about a little bit, and we are just in the process of getting set up, is on the Inspire Health podcast, we are creating something called the Inspire Life Multiversity. And this is where we are going to be housing some really powerful transformational courses that we are going to be doing ourselves, as well as collaborating with different guests and bringing some of the information and wisdom that they've got down into a very practical, user-friendly, and tangible way so that you can have direct experience with it. So we are incredibly excited about creating all of this information together. So what you can do is go to the inspirehealthpodcast.com, click on Inspire Life Multiversity, and from there you'll be able to see some of the courses that are going to be coming out, at least that we've got set up right now. We have several planned this year, but what you can do is click any one of those and just go on the waiting list, and then we will let you know as soon as the information comes out on them. The first one that's going to be coming out is going to be the course on Nature Care Solutions. This is going to be an incredibly useful and practical tool for everybody to have. And you can go and check that out. I really wrote this for those mama and papa bears that really cringe when they hear that the only option they've got is a medication, and that they want to know other options that they can do for themselves and for their family for a myriad of different health challenges that you come across. And so so that you are really prepared, so that you can actually step into that role of primary caregiver for the family, for yourselves and for your kids, and know what to do. It's all really essentially the same stuff that I do with my family on a regular basis, and I want you guys to know the same information. So if any of that remotely interests you, just go up and put your name on the email list so that you will get first dibs when we actually launch the course that will probably be coming out within the next few weeks. The other course that we have put together and that we will be launching a little bit later on is called the 30-Day Metaphysics Detox. And this has been something that's been brewing for a while. And this concept of metaphysics and the science and where metaphysics meet together and what lies beyond our perceived reality, which is the vast majority of what we are actually interacting with that we're just not even aware of. And so this really came to me over the Christmas holidays, over that break period where I just woke up one day and I'm like, this is a really important topic to dive into. And I just started putting it all together. So that's going to be a course that is going to be um, absolutely available for everybody. Everybody will have the option of actually doing that course, and we are really excited to get that out. So that will come out a little bit later on down the road here too, but I think that is going to put you into very practical, tangible experience so that you start to work with these principles of metaphysics. How do you start to remove what is actually not you, reconnect with more of what is you, and then actually bring more of you into the world. Because we are at a time where it is absolutely essential that we bring more of who we truly are into the world and ground that into this reality. And so that is what that course is going to really help people do. So again, if that interests you at all, go to the website at inspirehealthpodcast.com, click on Inspire Life Multiversity, and then just click on leaving your email, and we will get back to you as soon as we have more information on when that course is going to be released. So, all right, everybody, I hope you guys are enjoying this series. This was another beautiful interview with Kim and Jami, and another angle at this concept of looking at life, death, and beyond, and exploring our greater reality. And again, make sure that you listen to the music and the spoken word that they did somewhere around 50 minutes or 60 minutes into the interview. It's one of the last things we do before we finish up. So really worth taking the time to feel that and just listen to it and sit back and allow whatever starts to come up to come up. All right, everybody. Much love to all of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast. And we are still on our series, Life, Death, and Beyond, Exploring Our Greater Reality. And today we have two wonderful guests, Jami Sieber and Kim Rosen. Jami, did I say that properly in the last name?
You did. Good for you.
Awesome. Okay, so Jami and Kim are with us, and Jami is a composer and a cellist, and Kim is a spoken word artist. And they've created a transformative convergence of music and poems that emerge from the heartbreak, gratitude, and wake up call of this moment in our lives and in the life of our world. This unique creation, born of 21 years of collaboration, masterfully merges the power of music to melt the hearts with the medicine of poetry to open the mind. This results in a transformational listening experience like no other. Jami and Kim have been facilitating explorations of the difficult, necessary themes of aging, death, and waking up for many years. This offering is a culmination of their love, of their shared love of the realness, rawness, and intimacy that arises when we turn towards all levels of letting go. Guys, welcome so much to the show.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Jason.
This should be really fun because as we were talking about just before, this is kind of a different angle to this whole conversation. And like we were talking about, we try to do that. We try to bring in different angles and see what lands for people. And when, just like we said at the end there, your offerings are the culmination of the shared love of the realness, rawness, and intimacy that arises when we turn towards all levels of letting go. I really love that because I think that is actually one of the most powerful processes that anybody can go through, is this process of complete surrender. Maybe before we get into all of that, can you tell us a little bit about how did you guys even begin this process of meeting? musician and spoken word poetry, and how did that kind of come together?
Um, well, first off, it's great to be here. And Kim and I met 21 years ago. I had been touring musician and I had a solo recording out called Lush Mécanique. And, Kim, you should probably be telling this story.
Well, yes, I
Come to
did
think.
call you out. I was actually house sitting for a friend in Berkeley, and I had a bad back, and I lay down on the floor and I pushed play on their CD player, not knowing what was going to come on, and this amazing music came on. And many years earlier, a psychic, which some of you may know, Pat Rodegast, who channeled a being called Emmanuel, which was in the generation of Seth and Bartholomew and those early pioneers. Emmanuel had told me that I would be working with a musician live in a sound studio, evoking profound emotions from people, giving workshops at the same time that I was in the sound studio. And I said, right, you know. And then I heard Jamie's music, and I was giving a class, and there was a wonderful filmmaker in the class named Andrew Abrams, and he gave me a little film he'd made, and he had Jamie's music on it, and I recognized it. And I said, I will give you my firstborn if you introduce me to that woman. And he did. And I said, Jamie, can we just do a performance together? Just try it. So we had one rehearsal, and then we did this 4-hour performance because I had never performed with live music before. We also had another performer with us, and I didn't know courtesy. I didn't know etiquette. And so I just kept going and going and going because I was so excited. You know that feeling, it's like falling in love, like discovering the flow that you didn't even know was there because of coming together with another person. And in this case, it was her music that was drawing out of me poems that I had been learning by heart for many years.
Beautiful.
Want to add anything, Jamie?
Well, I'll add that for me, poetry was a small piece of my life. I had been performing and used some poetry within the performances, but for the most part, I didn't feel smart enough to understand poetry, to be honest. And Kim somehow brought me into the world of poetry in a way that I could understand and slowly be moved and changed by the power of the words. And so that's one of the exciting gifts of our collaboration for me, as well as we have, over the 21 years, really gotten to a place where we have fun
Yes.
and and just follow each other in beautiful ways when we get into the process of creating together.
I think that's beautiful. And what we will do is at the end of this, we will play a clip of some of the music so that people can actually get a taste of it. So we'll kind of finish
Great.
this whole thing up where we'll actually play a clip. We'll put it in so it's nice and everybody can hear it really well and it's clear. And we'll maybe set the stage up for it prior to that. But I think that's all really
Perfect.
beautiful. And your newest creation is Feast of Losses. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that and sort of the reason even for now for bringing that into the world.
Well, Feast of Losses is a line from a poem by Stanley
Stanley
Kunitz,
Kunitz.
who was poet laureate in America. Um, and Kim has known this poem. And when we were thinking of a title for the album, she was really excited about that. And I had a little hard time with it, given the number of losses people have been having over the last 3 years. I was a little bit scared to sort of, entitle the CD Feast of Losses because it felt like, well, have, if you've not had enough loss, here's more, you know, and but clearly the Feast of Losses became this magical balm, um, with music and the poetry that Kim then, you know, ended up speaking as we joined together. We would go away for 3 or 4 days and just improvise over the 3 or 4 days. And out of that process, 4 times in a year, we came up with ideas for probably 2 albums, but now we've condensed one of them into first album, and our dream and goal is to do a second album in the next couple of years. So that's a starting of the title, Feast of Losses. Do you have anything else to say about it, Kim?
Well, we're both in our 60s, and we both have friends who are substantially older than us and substantially younger than us. And we both, we have different, you know, spiritual histories together, but we do come together in the prayer, I would say, to turn towards what is, to open more and more deeply to what is. Now, what is, of course, there are so many realms and levels of what is, but the Buddhists say that there are 3 heavenly messengers, and I love that phrase, heavenly messengers, which of course is a translation, but messengers about heaven. And the 3 heavenly messengers are aging, death, and illness.
Hmm.
And these messengers are calling us into a deeper relationship with our realities. So with Jami and me having met 21 years ago and having had the, we are what they would call in the Maasai tribe, we're age mates, having grown older together, and recognize the losses and also the gains that come with that, and even the gains in the losses. The subtitle of our album is, I can't remember, a communion of grief and gratitude. Because really, as I hope this is forever true, but it's certainly been true so far for me, whenever there's grief, there's gratitude. And no matter what the realities are of what happens when we pass through that doorway, as Mary Oliver says, in the last poem on the album, I want to go through that doorway full of curiosity, she says. She writes, whatever happens when we go through that doorway, I've never met the losses, whether it's the loss of my capacity to walk around the block or the loss of my life. I've never met the losses without gratitude showing up at the same time, not only for what I've had, but for the vulnerability, the openness my inability brings forth. So as we age and we lose various things that our bodies did before, where did we get the idea that our bodies were supposed to remain the same and stay static at maybe 20 something forever? You watch how much a baby's body changes between 0 and 10 years old, and you watch the changes that happen in a human, in an adult in the last 10 years of their life, whatever it might be, if they have the privilege of aging, which of course we don't all have. They change almost as fast. We change almost as fast. So the letting go of who we were is a terrifying, but also an exciting and an opening possibility. And that's really, for me, what drew me towards doing this album with Jami. It's really the only thing I'm excited about right now, is that loss of who we thought we were and discovering who we are right now and now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Kim. I think that's bang
Beautiful.
on. And I mean, it's this idea. I mean,
Mhm.
you can take it in so many different areas of our lives. It's like, I would find even from a clinician point of view, if I was working with a patient and it was around even like diet, and it's like because they've been doing something all their life a certain way, but maybe they're transitioning hormonally, age, whatever it might be, yet we're still kind of clinging on to doing the same thing, even though it's not actually working for us anymore. And that if we could actually show up in the moment and
Mhm.
be and have this sort of real honest reflection with where we are, then we might have a little bit easier time of letting go of some of these old patterns and then stepping into something that might actually be more supportive for us at this point in time right now. You said a lot of really beautiful things, even around I feel like one of the things that your work does is it allows people to actually enter into a conversation within themselves with these difficult I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, no matter how you look at the perspective, loss is still challenging. But the beauty around it is that, and this reminds me of like what Pema Chodron used to talk about. She would talk about, it's almost like it's through the difficultness, if we can move through it, that we naturally arrive at a place of openness, awareness, and warmth within ourselves. And then that expands everywhere. So part of these conversations is just to sort of help us work with these challenging themes, and that if we can show up and whatever helps us be able to really show up authentically to sort of stay with some of this stuff, even when it is challenging and difficult. What I know myself, I've found that when we've gone through it, if I can stay with it and not sort of abrupt the process, but allow it to just move. And music, I think, and spoken word is a really beautiful way to almost take you on the journey of letting it move through you. You do arrive at something different. And I would say very much organically, you fall into this openness, awareness, and warmth space that then I think makes a big impact outside of yourself for the rest of the world too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also want to at this point mention, though, that there are the personal losses that Kim was speaking about in terms of aging, that you've mentioned in terms of what medical shifts we have to go through and be challenged by as we age. But we also went through an unusual time where globally we all felt the loss, that was the losses that were happening in Italy, in Africa, in just everywhere around COVID. And then within our own country in the US, we were losing democracy in some ways. We had the fear of losing democracy. So, on every level, we were being challenged by losses and fear of how to move forward in a way that if we don't turn toward it, we're going to lose our connection to each other in a really deep and profound way that is very important for us at this time in order to move forward.
Yeah.
It makes me think of just the other day, a few days ago, with the full moon, and it felt like there was other stuff going on, but we were viscerally noticing things feeling strange off one night,
And our kids
and our
we've got a
kids
5 and 6 year old, and you can usually see because there's less filters.
filter
So you can see in the kids and even sometimes like animals too,
our
you'll
animals,
see
yeah,
a lot of transitions. I
something in
mean,
the
there's so
air.
much to our reality that we're not consciously always aware of.
And then the
Mhm.
following, it was interesting because that night when we were going to bed and we were cuddling in with our little ones, one is 5, one is 6, um, one of them had to be, she insisted that I sit up with her and hold her and just, we rocked. And as soon as I would come to lie down with her, she would resist it and she'd want to sit upright, look out the window and keep getting rocked. So we did that. And our older one, our 6-year-old, she was just really squirmy in her body. And she turned to me and said, "Mummy, there's something going on and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to make it go away."
And she goes, and I don't know what it is.
And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And in, you know, in all the innocence and the sweetness. And I said to her, honey, just, it's okay. I know it doesn't feel comfortable, but just let it move through you. Let the current move through you. And so we were all kind of working with that current that was moving through all of us, the whole household, actually. My parents are on the upper level. And so the following day at school, maybe you could speak up on it, what happened.
Yeah, because what came up, and it's like we don't try to put too many words on it for them because I want it to be their experience, but I just want them to know that we're here and it's supporting, and it you know, it moves through. These emotions have cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was then at the end, it came up, it was this really heavy grief that was coming up that they were feeling. And then at school, what was really interesting is I went there after, and the teacher said they did a sharing circle,
Which they do every
which
day.
they do every day at the sort of forest type of school that they're at. And she said it was a lot of loss and grief that was coming up for all of the kids, and it was like
Sadness.
and sadness, and whatever was kind of that current that was taking place. I think a lot of times there's global currents that just are sweeping through that we are processing, I think it's also, I don't think of them as a bad thing. I think it's just a part of being here, and it's a part of allowing it to filter through. But I thought it was really amazing that it was just all taking place, and then that got spoken again at the school, that was going on for like a lot of the people at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful.
Makes me want to go to your school, that school.
Oh my gosh,
We feel very blessed.
it's really beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, like some of the characteristics that they're looking at him, it's like common sense, awe and reverence for all things, still mind. These are some of the things they're trying to build, and not build, but almost like express more with from the child.
They have quiet sit spots with a tree every single day. And they increase that time, so it's incrementally moved from 1 minute to now the kids sit comfortably on their own for over 10 minutes now.
It's adorable. They all have their little spot. They all kind of go and sit down by the
They
tree or
choose.
by whatever, and just get used to it.
I think too, having animals, which, you know, we have dogs, we have chickens, and other animals come visit us because we have a decent sized garden here. What naturally starts to happen is our girls get exposed to the cycle of life and death quite regularly and naturally and organically. There was a mom who actually was confronted with a dead owl on her property. So she actually that morning brought that owl in to the school for the children to see and give thanks to being present and on this planet with us and sharing all their abilities with us. And so they did a ceremony. They all collected flowers and they decorated this box where the owl was lying to give their thanks. And so, I mean, it's such a gift because we didn't have that. And I remember as a kid growing up, and it was such a, death was such a, it was such a shocker, like it is for most people, because we're so removed from it. And so when I heard news of my grandparents one by one who had raised me in a different country, when I heard news that they had passed away, I didn't even know how to place it. Like, what does that mean? Like, where did they go? Where are they? And because my family grew up without faith, it was so startling as a kid. So I think what you guys are sharing with music and poetry, because, you know, it's no accident that we've had, you know, mystics and poets speak of, there was a quote from Rumi, the wound is where the light enters. And what does that mean? But it kind of strikes you at that moment where you are going through a loss, a grief of some sort, a deep sadness. These words kind of land in a way that, you know, the plain language without the metaphor of poetry, or without the speechlessness, waves that music comes to us and lands in our heart and vibrates throughout our whole body. I feel like these are such gifts that we have to be able to sit with these unspeakable, unknown or unfamiliar or uncomfortable feelings that arise within all of us, especially at this time, like you're pointing out.
Yeah, so beautiful. And one of the things we have really, I think we've been taught by beginning to listen to this album with other people is probably what your kids are learning, having a sharing circle, which is that we've been encouraging people to create listening parties with the music and poetry so that we can, and I'm going to say this, it's going to sound like a joke, but it's not really a joke, so that we can take the medicine together, because it is a medicine. The phenomenon of the music and poetry, as you say, the speechlessness, I love that description of the music, the speechlessness of the music with the poetic metaphor and language, it actually does biochemically. I mean, Jason, you probably know more about this than I do. It biochemically changes the pulsation of the brain waves through the entrainment. A poem can do that alone. And a piece of music can do that alone because of the parts of the poem that you're not completely aware of, which is the rhythm, the breath, the sound of the words, but each poem is its own piece of music. And then for some poems, when you put them together with music, at least with the way that Jami and I have just been really blessed to be able to steep in the music that just comes out of her when she picks up her bow spontaneously, and the poems that are learned by heart within me, there's a merging of it that can become, the metaphor I use is shamanic, in the sense that a shaman's drum or song or some kind of sound phenomenon in the space, even my clapping right now, is entraining our heartbeats and our breath. And so that we're pulsating not just differently from usual, but also together.
Mm.
And then you can feel it when it stops.
Mm-hmm.
How that changed our, literally the pulsation of the cerebrospinal fluid around the brain so that the brain can relax. I like to say that poetry uses the brain to unlock the brain. And I suspect I could say the same about music in a more nuanced way.
Yeah, I think I think that I mean, if anybody's listened to even like our old series that we did on energy, frequency, vibration, magnetics, the next era of healthcare, it was this idea of let's look at how powerful some of this other stuff is, because it usually it does precede the physical manifestation, the physical, biochemical, all these sort of pieces. When you combine, and we know through different episodes too, the spoken word is incredibly powerful, and the sound healing is incredible power. When you combine those things, you create sort of a resonance field that allows people to move into something that maybe they can't do as easily on their own. You kind of literally will create a field that can bring people into a place where now they can even start the process of working with something that maybe they weren't able to before.
And
So,
what we're also finding more and more too, and maybe I'd love your feedback on this, but it's like those feelings can't be denied or repressed or pushed aside or left for a better day or a lifetime to work with. They sit somewhere within our bodies. And even as we were going through the trauma series, this came up as well. The most effective cultures in our world that are dealing most effectively with major catastrophes that move through certain countries or certain times in our history have been those cultures that do the drumming, the dancing, the community coming
The
together,
ceremony,
the movement,
the togetherness.
yeah. So I think even what we're realizing more and more is we can't not feel. It's something that we have to move through.
Yes. I keep thinking, forgive me for this, but I keep thinking of the story you told us before the interview began about your chickens and about how this big wind came and took their house away, but they were fine, right? And yet human beings have for whatever reasons, and one could go on and on about what the reasons are, but we do have this freeze, fight, flight response that holds, we could say, trauma or feelings in the body so that they don't move through, as you were speaking of helping your children to allow the feelings to move through. So yes, we can't not feel, but we can clutch against those feelings. And I need to put myself in environments where I am defenseless against my feelings, even after having done deep psychological, spiritual work on emotional release since I was 22 years old, which was a very long time ago. I still need to consciously choose to put myself into environments that are going to hold me from the outside, as music and poetry holds you, or a workshop holds you, or a therapy session holds you, or this conversation is holding us. I need to put myself into a container to allow that letting go. And really, for me, and I think for others, the music and poetry, there's all this work being done now about using psychedelics to help people with deep trauma or end of life. And I think there is this longing that something will come in and help me undefend myself, help me melt the walls, whether it's a substance or it's a medicine of a poem or a piece of music that makes
Beautiful.
us defenseless against ourselves.
I love the way that you said
Defense.
that a situation where you become defenseless against my emotions. That's I mean that is the to me that's the epitome of surrender. I remember Dr. David Hawkins in his book Letting Go: Pathway to Surrender. He talked about letting go is literally letting go of the resistance to feeling what is naturally surfacing. And that's challenging sometimes because to do that, you put yourself in a totally defenseless sort of place of vulnerability. So I think why it becomes so difficult is a lot of times people just don't feel safe in their bodies. There's lots of fears that operate usually within them. And I mean, it's almost like a commonplace thing for so many people now. It's hard to find that place of absolute safety to be able to allow the unwinding to take place where you can just kind of, it's like you're in a flotation tank where you just like lie there and let, just surrender everything over to the experience of it. And like you were talking about earlier with that we get arrested sort of in the process. Our nervous system literally does get stuck. And anybody who wants to know more about that, watch the trauma series, particularly the episode we did with Dr. Stephen Porges. He talks about that. Him and Dr. Peter Levine are kind of like the main guys that have really explained how that affects the nervous system. And how animals, because they get caught in the thinking mind around it so much, they kind of just naturally move through and shake it all off and they're done. They're so much more present. We tend to get very connected and identified with our experiences, and then I think that's where we sort of get stuck very much. So I think this process of finding the space to be able to be defenseless against your feelings and allow them to run the course, that's so key for human beings. We need to be able to find that type of space.
And even these circles that you were alluding to earlier, I think that's such a phenomenal idea where you can kind of find a safe network. And like you said, that's really key, I think. Just find your closest, bestest family, friends that whom you can kind of unguard yourself
Mhm.
with in order to allow that deep healing and unwinding to occur.
And sometimes I find you guys probably find this too, but sometimes it's not even with your closest friends. It's with total strangers sharing in the experience.
Mhm.
Like I imagine you guys do sort of like a concert with people there that are all kind of working through stuff. I could just imagine the openness and the tears and the hugs that probably start to pour
Mhm.
out from total strangers. That's kind of the beauty of it.
Yes, we make
Mhm.
sure that there's Kleenex between the two feet. And we also give retreats together where I can bring in the my background in working with deep release and opening with the individuals, and Jamie creates a soundscape of music that contains that. And I bring in my work with breath work and ceremony and deep sharing and movement, and all of this is a way of dislodging the holding. That even going to Mexico with Jami and Kim is a way of dislodging the familiar,
Yeah.
lifting
Mhm.
us out of
Mhm.
the familiar, disorient. It's sacred disorientation of our defenses so that we can drink at the well of who we are, right?
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's so true.
Mhm.
We were just talking about this a while ago. I was having a conversation with another health practitioner. I was just saying, the most of the time when I see like really deep healing take place, like really deep healing on all levels, it's usually when they have taken themselves out of their familiarity. Usually it's when they've gone on some type of a retreat where they are out of their familiar zone, because that already starts to make the cracks open a little bit.
Away
And
from
then
people they know. So actually, not going necessarily with your partner or your best friend or your mom. It's actually doing it solo because, like you said, that feeling of being uprooted does bear vulnerability to our roots and all of our stories that we tend to
Mhm.
typically hold in and not reveal to anyone.
yeah, and it just allows things to open up. We did one retreat once, and I remember a lot of times it's the wives bringing in their husbands, and she came in with her husband, and he goes, "Look," he goes, "I'm not doing yoga, I'm not dancing, and I'm not crying." Okay. After 3 days, he's bawling. He's at the sheriff's circle. He's like, "I did yoga, I danced, and I'm crying."
Isn't that beautiful? What a
It
victory.
was it was
That's
the most
great.
beautiful experience. Yeah, for
And
sure.
and they didn't know each other. It was just from a
Yeah.
coming together and being able to share that space together, with a common intent. I think, holding an
Mhm.
intent for them. That's what's so beautiful about this kind of work when you're running a retreat. Are you guys running any retreats coming up right at the moment?
We have a retreat in Sayulita, Mexico, the end of April, beginning of May.
Oh, great.
And it's a week long, and there are a couple spots that are open if you want to go to,
Spots open.
yeah, if you want to go to either one of our websites, and there's information there about it.
Great. So
Um,
this episode will actually air before that time. So for the
oh,
audience
great.
who may be interested, please check out their website, which we will have a link to at the bottom of this recording as well.
We'll have all of that information in the show notes there so people can get to that as
Great.
well. I'm
Mhm.
just wondering
You know,
too.
oh,
Or go ahead.
you know
Go
what
ahead.
I also wanted to say about Jason, though, is there are a number of people who don't have the privilege and the opportunity to go away on a retreat or to go away from their 4 or 5 children who are, at the door knocking for them or various situations. And I feel really the anecdote that we need to step one do is slow down, is
Mhm.
make those moments where we
Mm.
just stop. It can be as simple as just, if you have children, putting them to bed and just stopping, and that's what's so beautiful about the listening parties that Kim and I have created with this CD is that, we just invite people without distraction to listen and to let the music and the poetry work its way within you. And I feel like in fast time that we're all being invited to dance in these days, that kind of work can't go on. That kind of experience of emotion and depth of life and living cannot happen at that speed. So how do you find the place to slow down in your life? You know, we can all do it if we choose to do it. It's, you know, it's not like a magical retreat we have to go on. We can just stop
Yeah.
and find those moments of stillness.
Yeah, I perfectly said. I think that's incredibly powerful. I really think that's actually at the heart of it. I think that's the most powerful medicine because
Yeah.
like you even said in one of your, I think, interviews, you said, listen to ourselves in their presence. I thought that was really
Hmm.
beautiful too, because
Hmm.
it's just
Hmm.
in this sort of background presence gives you a window to actually go deeper within yourself. And it's ultimately from there that we find the stillness. And usually that's where we get our aha moments that help to redirect our
Yeah.
lives in different ways. And I mean, I totally get it too. It's like you've got, we've got three kids, we've got two little ones and then an 18-year-old and busy lives. And it's like you're trying to figure out where do you hit the pause button and start to rearrange things a little bit. But I really feel like in a lot of ways, I think we are all being called to re-look. And the only way we can really re-look
Hmm.
authentically is to slow down. And we have to find some space for that. I really think on a much global level, we have to find that stillness because it's in that stillness that we actually re-look at everything. We actually approach everything from a new perspective. And then it's like, then we're kind of called, how do we individually bring that into the world? What's that going to look like? But when we have that
Hmm.
experience with it, it's almost like what we talked about at the very beginning. To me, I think what you were talking about, Kim, with that feeling of kind of falling in love with something, I feel like it's from those places that you connect to that sort of knowing and that inspired action that then has to be expressed, right? And it's from
Hmm.
that place that we usually find where do we start to change things up a little bit? Where do we find more space for that? Because we value it so much more and we have a
Hmm.
visceral knowing of its importance.
And I would just say, I will admit that something happened to me in the pandemic where I cannot slow down the way I used to be able to. I hope it comes back, but it's all well and good to say, take 5 minutes and slow down, but it doesn't happen for me. But when I just got back from Kenya, which is other work that I do, working with the Maasai tribe with young girls and young women. And I was in the midst of a very difficult part in Kenya. And every morning I just took 8 minutes to play the final track of our album. And there's something about being held in a piece of music, with or without the
Hmm.
poetry.
Hmm.
There's something about that container that allows me to let my mind's normal activity melt. It's almost like a crutch that I need at this point.
Hmm.
My attention my having splintered my attention so drastically during the pandemic, I need that incredible piece of music that always opens my heart, no matter what I'm doing, to bring me back to myself. So it's a recommendation. It sounds like an advertisement, but really it's not. It's a lifeline of being able to put on one track of a piece of music that you like to hold that slowing down
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
you. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that that is a really powerful way to be able to just connect into that space. And I mean, gosh, Lord knows it's sometimes hard to find that space. And I really do think even like since the pandemic and all of the stuff that's transitioned over the past few years, I really feel like there's an agitation in general on a global level on so many aspects of it. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like so many aspects of,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like how when we interviewed Paul Selig, I like the way he kind of explained it, but he talked about that everything is coming up to be re-seen from with new perspectives from a higher sort of harmonic, so that we can then interact with it differently. But in the process of it coming up and seeing everything in all these different ways,
It's
it,
always
it,
just
it
gonna feel.
agitates. I mean, we're going to feel it. We're supposed to feel it. So it's not to even try and push it away, but I think it's recognizing that it's there. And then whatever pathway we can use to just allow it to keep kind of moving through, and transmute as best we can. But I think a lot of that is going on too, Kim. I think that a lot of people are feeling more of that restless energy inside the body than ever before, because I think it's just all coming up like a tidal wave to feel. So I think it would be really amazing if we can just play one of your pieces for people to enjoy and sort of get the experience from. Which do you think would be one of the better pieces to play for everybody, and how would they be able to kind of prep themselves to be able to get the most out of the experience?
Well,
Do you want to go ahead?
we'd love to play the piece "When Death Comes," which is a poem that Mary Oliver said was actually her most requested poem. The poet Mary Oliver, who died a couple of years ago, and we're honored to have this poem on the album. And to me, it's the most beautiful piece of music I've ever heard that Jami and a number of other musical artists created. And I think what I will say about prepping, and then you can add what you like, Jami, is to go back to something I said earlier, which is to consider it as taking a medicine, in the sense of become curious, as when you take a medicine, whether it's an Advil or peyote, become curious what comes up within you as you steep in this poetry and music. You can always go look up the words of the poem. You can always replay the music. But what's going to come up in you right now at this moment in your life? That's why we go to a symphony or a movie. We don't go to hear the symphony. We go to hear ourselves in the marinade of the symphony. And so that's what we invite you to. And to that end, we've worked very hard with a lot of artists to create a sound environment where the poem is deeply immersed in the music. It's not background music. The music and the poem are equally exciting and important. And it's not about hearing every word of the poem. It's about hearing every arising from within you as you allow yourself to be changed by this music and poetry.
Beautiful.
So we are going to play that piece right now for you, and then just sit back and allow it to land. And
Yeah, allow the music to really touch you.
When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn. When death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut. When death comes like the measles pox. When death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades. I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like? That cottage of darkness. and therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, ending as all music does, towards silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride, married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world.
And thank you so much for that. Can you tell us where we can send the audience to get to learn more about you, to stay in the loop about your upcoming workshop in Mexico, or retreat rather, in Mexico in April, as well as other events you may be having?
Well, you can find Jami at her website, www.jamisieber.com. And you can also download our album. We are not yet streaming it because we hoped to have people actually buy the album. So you can download it or you can order a CD at Jamie's website. You can find me at kimrosen.net, N-E-T, net, not com, that's somebody else. And you can find out about our upcoming events. I give occasional free online events as well as courses, in addition to the retreat that Jamie and I are giving in Mexico starting April 29th, which is a week-long juicy retreat in Mexico.
Oh my gosh. And I think a lot of people in North America will be very excited to go somewhere like Mexico in end of April. By that point, everybody's ready for some
Serious
nice
sun.
warmth and
It's true.
relaxation. So that sounds amazing,
Yeah.
guys. We
And
will
let me
have,
just say that I did write a book called Saved by a Poem, which is really about the spiritual practice of learning poems by heart and the profoundly transformational impact that can have. So just to
oh, that's
put
cool.
that into the
Kim,
mix.
do you run courses on that work too to assist people with that?
I have for years, and it is not, now I don't run courses directly on that. I have students who do, and I also, it's embedded in all of my courses.
Wonderful.
Mostly I'm giving courses on letting go, aging, and death now.
Very important right at the moment. So, guys, thank you very much. That was a really wonderful chat. We really enjoyed being able to talk to you guys.
Are there any final messages or words that you would want to convey to the audience? Feel free.
Um, I can't think of anything. I feel like we've done a whole river of conversation here that I can't think of anything. Kim?
It's easy to talk to you too, and I see why you
Yeah.
do what you do. You have a gift for bringing forth what's most important, and I feel like we've benefited from that. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Likewise, that
you.
was really wonderful getting to chat with you
And thank you
guys.
for the beautiful work that you're putting out there for that for a space for people to be able to step into from even the comforts of their own home as well.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you.
much, everybody, and much love to both of you.